Hello, everybody. My name is Delaney Goodman, and this is my brown paper bag activity. I have tried to provide closed captioning just in case, I don't know, there's audio issues or in case someone needs to read it rather than listen to it, lots of reasons. But I will also be providing a comments on the sidebar that will basically sum up what I'm going to say. So that gives you something else to read just in case the closed captions are wrong because that tends to happen, and it's okay, we will figure it out. So this paper or brown paper bag activity, the purpose of it is to answer two main questions. So those two questions are: one, why teach social studies? And two, what are you teaching for? So on the side you can see here, that is the comment box I'm talking about. So this presentation is actually very important to me to think about because, growing up, I was never really a fan of social studies. Even to this day, just to be completely honest, the thought of social studies or history really kind of intimidates me. It's not something that I've enjoyed. It's a topic that I'm not super comfortable about. If I'm in a room of people talking about history, I will get uncomfortable because I'm not knowledgeable enough about it. And it's never been my area of expertise. So I really do look forward to this class and learning all about that. But this project was really a good one to start out with because it did make me sit down and think about all the reasons why, teaching social studies is important and wishing that I had these experiences. So I remember, going through school and I learned all about wars. I learned about all these parts of history, and I learned about economics, and I learned about the government, and I never really understood why it was important. I never understood why, as somebody that was not going into a field where history was a part of my daily activities, why I needed to know it. I recall a time that I asked one of my high school professors, I was like, why do we need to know this? And I can't remember what we were learning about, but it just made no sense to me. I didn't understand why it was important for us to know what we were learning. And he basically just told me, he was like, the state wants you to know it. Like, he didn't tell me it's important for you to know it because it helps you learn your role in the society. It helps you to understand past mistakes so we can make better choices for the future. He never said any of that. He just told me the state requires you to know it. And that was really disappointing to me because why would I put in the effort and try to understand a topic that wasn't going to impact me? Like, I was a science and math type of girl. I still am. And those things I used all the time, math and science, they were so important to my everyday life. That's what I wanted to do for the longest time, was be a scientist, which I want to do math also, which goes into a lot of science. So like, I really understood those topics, but I didn't understand this one. And I wish I would have had that professor or that teacher or elementary school teacher or whoever to tell me at least one good reason why it was important to know this. You know, this really contributed to my childhood, like life, childhood, the whole thing, being uninterested in social studies because I never had a good reason to like it. So, I want to be that change for my students and be able to provide them with some answers that I was not provided with as a kid. I want to hopefully create that difference for them early on so that they know why social studies is important, not only knowing history, but also knowing economics, geography. There's so much that goes into history or social studies, and I want my students to know why it's important. So I really put a lot of effort into this, figuring out why I think it's important, even though I'm not a history person, and I hope to become one. But it was very vital for me to sit down and figure this out for myself, because if I couldn't figure out why it was important, how could I teach my students to figure out how it's important? So I'm going to get started now and tell you, after I just rambled about all of that. So to provide an understanding for my students, I've thought about the reasons that I think teaching social studies is important. So the biggest reason that I believe teaching social studies is important is because it teaches empathy. So I think that it's important to teach empathy to our students. I'm a firm believer that, so many of the problems that we face in the world today, that arise in the world today, are because of a lack of empathy amongst the people in our country. You consistently hear about racism, sexism, you hear about judgment of other religions, judgment of cultures, beliefs, all these things. You hear about the terrifying and tragic events, such as a police officer killing someone just because they're of African American descent and they're racist. You hear about, hate crimes of people that are homosexual. All these things that we hear about truly are a result of the lack of empathy and understanding of other people. So, by teaching social studies, our students will learn about different cultures. They'll learn about different religions and, different aspects of the humans around us. I believe that we genuinely are afraid of what we don't understand. So we turn away from the things that are unfamiliar to us and we make ourselves feel better by judging other things that we're not familiar with and by putting others down, to make ourselves feel like they are the weird ones. We need to teach them that it's okay to be different. So while our differences do define us to an extent, like it's not like my differences from you, like that's what makes me who I am, but that doesn't mean that we can't all understand everyone else and be willing to appreciate other people. I put a picture of a salad bowl on the slide right here. And I think you always hear, or at least I've always heard, I don't know about everyone else, but I've always heard that America is a melting pot. And that is great and fine. They're trying to talk about diversity and how we're so diverse and all these people come together and we melt into one, but that's not the case. I think that that's trying to minimize the differences amongst people, and that's trying to change who people are to conform everybody to one type of person. And that's not what America is about. I think that it's important that we teach our kids basically that America is like a salad, not like a melting pot. We have, all the different ingredients of a salad. We have the lettuce, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the onions, the croutons, the cheese. And when we mix them together, we're not changing the ingredients. We're not changing the flavors of the ingredients. We're not changing who the ingredients are. And the same thing goes for our world. Like you have people who have different beliefs. You have people who have different races, different religions, different skin colors, different sexual preferences, whatever it may be. There are so many differences in this world. And instead of saying that we're a melting pot and trying to turn us into one collective whole, we need to value and appreciate those differences and grow to understand that it is okay to be different. You don't have to be the same. We don't have to be the same, and that is okay. And until students understand that, they can't be empathetic towards others. So that is definitely one of my biggest reasons for teaching social studies, because kids need to be empathetic. They need to learn that, we don't all have to be the same. It doesn't matter what it is, what the difference is. We do not all have to be the same. So, with that being said, I think that truly is my biggest reason for teaching social studies. That's why I wanted to start out with it, because that is very important to me. On the screen, you'll see two social studies standards. One is from first grade and one is from second grade. Most of the standards that you will see throughout the presentation will be first grade standards, because I will be teaching first grade next year. So I just want to go ahead and kind of get familiar with the ones that I was going to be teaching. So, you have them talking about historical figures that display positive character traits, displaying fairness, respect for others, respect for the environment, courage, equality, tolerance, perseverance, and commitment. Then in second grade, you have them talking about historical figures who demonstrate positive citizenship traits such as honesty, dependability, honor, civility, good sportsmanship, patience, compassion. These are very important things. And I think that these help to teach empathy, because it teaches what good characters will do. Like they will be fair. They'll show equality. There will be tolerance, respect for the environment, respect for others. So those are just two of the standards that I found that I thought were interesting and kind of displayed a little bit of what I was talking about. The next reason is because I believe that teaching social studies, it teaches agency, like it promotes agency. So agency is basically just, it refers to the power that we have to take action. So the power to take action against personal problems, public problems. It's interesting to think about all the problems that we face in the United States, in the world, whatever. We face all kinds of social issues. There are social issues such as, global warming, wage inequality, gender inequality, racial discrimination. Depending on who you are, where you're from, what your class is, what your race is, you'll experience different social problems. So, all of these might not apply to you, but these are, you know, even if it doesn't apply to you, you need to be aware of these social problems that are going on around you. Um, and I think that even though some people are aware of these social problems, we feel hopeless in these problems. We feel that, these are things that we can't change. These are things that are out of our control and we can't do anything to advocate for ourselves. We think that we are formed because of our circumstances. We are shaped by our circumstances. That's not the case. I simply don't believe that. I do think that there are some things that may seem out of our control, but we can help change that. We can advocate for ourselves. It teaches us, like social studies teaches us that people can make a difference. In the picture on the screen is a picture of Rosa Parks, which I think most people know about Rosa Parks. It's kind of like a cliche example, but talking all about how she, stood up for what she thought was right, not giving up her seat on the public transportation bus. I mean, we idolize these people in history. We talk about all the things that these people did, all the differences that these people make. And I think what we fail to understand is that one person who did create a difference, Rosa Parks, Washington Carver, or George Washington Carver, sorry, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Thomas Edison, all these people that made inventions, made a difference in the world, stood up for human rights, women's rights. They were human too. And we fail to remember that sometimes. We just always think that they could do it, but we can't do it. We can do it. We are a human, and humans are the ones who make the change in the world. So, I think that teaching social studies really it allows students to understand that these heroes and idols are just people, and we're people too, and we can make that difference. So basically, I just think that we're not helpless. We're not just on this earth for 80 years, whatever, and there's nothing we can do about what's going on around us, because we can. And I think even a lot of adults fail to recognize that. So it is my goal that I teach my students this early on, that they can create change. And even if it's something small, such as, treating people fairly, treating people equally, not being racist, not having stereotypes about people and prejudices, it might seem like a little bit, it might not seem like it's that big of a deal to do such small things, but those small things add up. You can create a change. And I really want my students to know that. So that is a very big reason for why I want to teach social studies. The third reason is because I think that it's important to teach social studies because, we can learn from our past. So a very iconic line that I heard growing up all of my life is, we need to know history because history inevitably repeats itself. I never understood that saying, because to me, in my head, I was like, if history is so important to learn and we need to analyze it and understand it, then why were we making the same mistakes? If we analyzed the past and saw the mistakes we made, then why were we making the same mistakes in the future? Why was history repeating itself? Were we making the same decisions when history repeated itself? Is that the goal? No, the goal is to learn from our history, to learn from our past mistakes. I think that is a clear distinction that needs to be made when someone tells a kid that we need to know history because history repeats itself. Because I didn't understand that as a kid. I was like, how can history repeat itself if we know what happened before? How could we allow that to happen again and make the same decision? So that is definitely a distinction I will make for my students. But I do think that this applies to more than just social studies. I think that it teaches us that everyone makes mistakes and that it's okay, but we do need to learn from those mistakes and change for the future. When we talk about history, it's okay to talk about the mistakes that were made, the beliefs that have changed over time, yet even though they were okay back then, they're not necessarily okay now, knowing how to take what we were, knowing where we came from and the mistakes we made allows us to make a better future for ourselves and our future kids and generations to come. It allows us to understand why parts of our history are important yet weren't ideal. So, think about slavery, for example. Slavery was okay back in the day. Slavery was a normal thing. It wasn't wrong. Now we know that's not okay. Slavery is not an okay thing. And if we were to just let history repeat itself, we would have slaves again. We would repeat those same mistakes. No, because we need to learn from those mistakes in our history and create that difference. So, that's just something that I think is a very important distinction. Sorry, I'm trying to allow you to see exactly what I said. It's really typed out and it doesn't let me show you the screen while also showing you the slide. So if you just kind of want to take a screenshot of this and look at it, I mean, I don't know if you'll need to read it, but if you do, it is there for you. But anyways, so the artifact that I chose to represent this, the main one that I chose is the picture of the banana slips. So I find this really interesting because if you look at this picture, there are 5 banana slips on the ground and a guy is walking and he slips on one of them. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this guy slips on a banana slip. When he gets up, or a banana peel, sorry. When he gets up, is he just going to continue walking and fall in the next banana peel and then the next banana peel and the next? No, he shouldn't. He should get back up, analyze what happened in the past, just now in the past, what happened. He slipped on a banana peel. If he does not want to slip on the next one, what does he do? Does he make the same decision to keep walking and not step over it? Or because a wasp came inside my front door and I had to move because it scared me. So anyways, back to what I was saying is, if he doesn't want to continue slipping on the banana peels and making the same mistake over and over and over again, he will learn from his mistake and he will make a different decision. So I just, I kind of think about that the same way as history. In our past, there are mistakes that were made. And if history repeats itself, in order for us to not just keep going down the same rabbit hole and having the same results, we need to learn from our mistakes. So, a mistake repeated more than once is a decision. And don't repeat the same mistake and expect a different result. So, that's something I just think that our students need to know. So that'll definitely be something that I teach them. The fourth reason that I think it is important to teach social studies is because teaching social studies teaches students responsibility and good decision making. So, I think that teaching social studies is important because it teaches them stories about the past, about wars and other peoples, but it also includes teaching about economics. It teaches them that they, when they learn about economics, it teaches them how to make connections between their hard work and their success. Not only their hard work and success in school, but in life, in a job, for a career, whatever it may be. Hard work typically leads to success. So it teaches students, that putting in responsibility, putting forth an effort and risk can, and most of the time will yield better results. Economics teaches students about their roles as workers and entrepreneurs. It teaches them about being a consumer, a borrower, a saver. It teaches them about how to make the future better for themselves, how to make good decisions. It teaches students that sometimes our wants don't outweigh our needs. The image of the 2 apples is iconic because, in this modern day and age, we all want iPhones. Yet what we need is a real apple, not an Apple phone. So, sometimes we have to realize that although they aren't decisions that we necessarily want to make, they're decisions that we need to make. So, we might want to spend our money on candy, but we need to save our money for a rainy day in case something were to happen. Teaching social studies teaches the students of making such decisions. It teaches them how, we are responsible for those decisions and those decisions have consequences. So to make good decisions is important because we will have better outcomes. That's another important reason why I want to teach social studies to students, to teach them about all those good decisions and choices that they can make in this economy. And on the screen, you'll see 4 first grade standards that talk about identifying goods, that people make and services that they provide each other, talking about unlimited wants being, greater than the limited resources we have, talks about how people are both producers and consumers, and explaining that people can earn income by working and that they must make choices about how to save and spend their money. But I would also tie into that teaching first grade next year about how, we have to put in that hard work. We don't just have money that falls off trees. We don't just obtain things through doing nothing. We have to work for it. And that is important to learn because we can't just have life handed to us. And we need to understand that working hard will provide us with the outcomes that we desire. So the last, and I think one of the most important reasons that I want to teach social studies is because I think that it teaches about democracy. And I know that that sounds very cliche to say, but it's important that students understand that, a democracy is run by people. The government is run by the people, not a person, by the people. It's not run by an individual or even a group of individuals. The government is run by people. A democracy means, that each citizen has the right to vote. They have the right to create change through being an active citizen and doing our role as a citizen. Students need to understand our roles as citizens. They need to understand our roles of people as people in the government. They need to understand the powers of the government. Students, I think that one of the things that honestly going into high school, I wasn't even really clear on, and I should have been, was what powers does the president have? What is checks and balances? Does the Senate run everything? Does the House of Representatives run everything? Is it a collective measure where we run it together? Do the people run it? These are things that the students need to know. On slide 2, or sorry, not slide 2, on this slide, you will see 2 artifacts. And the first one, if you zoom in on it, says we didn't vote because it wouldn't make a difference. You see the people on the left-hand side, and it's about, I would say 1/4 of a little more than 1/4 of the picture, but we'll just say 1/4. And then the right side is the people who didn't vote. And they're the ones who said they didn't vote because it wouldn't make a difference. And that's about 3/4 of the picture. Then below that, you'll see a picture of Dwight Schrute, who loved The Office. So of course, I had to include him. It says, think your vote doesn't matter. Millennials are 1/3 of the voting population. So I think that this is even a problem in kids our age. Like there are kids I know who don't vote because they don't think their vote matters. And I think this is stemmed from childhood. Like I think that they weren't taught that their vote does matter. I think that they might have heard their parents say it. They might have heard teachers say it. I don't know. I've heard a lot of people say this. And I think it's important that we teach students that that's not the case. They do have a right. They need to use that voice. They have a voice. And if you look at the picture that I included, those 3/4 of those people in that picture who said, we didn't vote because it doesn't make a difference, all of those single votes, those 1 votes that didn't matter, turned into 3/4 of that image, 3/4 of those people in that image. It would have mattered. It counts. But if everyone thinks it doesn't count, then it doesn't, because you're not doing your part. And I am a firm believer that you can't have opinions about the way the government is run if you are not doing your part as a citizen and using your voice. So basically, I think that students need to learn that they have a right in a democracy. They have freedoms. They need to know their constitutional rights. They need to know what we as a country stand for. and what we as people in this country can do to protect those rights to create change. Um, so that's just really important. I know that's a super cliche reason, but it is vital for students to know. On the screen, you'll see some standards. One is first grade, I think one is third grade. But it talks about the elements of a representative democracy in the republic and the state. And the first grade one talks about exploring the concept of patriotism through words in two of the songs. And I think that's important because we need to teach students what our country stands for, what our democracy stands for, and the rights that we have as citizens. And I would hope that my students would take pride in those rights. So I just thought that would be a good standard to include. That does conclude my reasons for why I want to teach social studies, or why I think it's important to teach social studies. But as you can see here on the screen, the last two that I included were just the correlating standards. I wrote first grade because, like I said before, I will be teaching first grade. So I included the majority of those because they relate and I'll be teaching them next year. But I did include, one second grade standard and one third grade standard, I believe, just because I couldn't find standards that displayed exactly what I wanted it to throughout this presentation. So, I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry if the text box on the side was confusing. I was trying to make it to where you can see, I think you can see the subtitles, but just like I said, just in case you can't, don't know if you'll need them, but just want them to be there in case. So I hope that everyone else found this project as endearing as I did. As a non-social studies person, as a non-history person, I enjoyed this. And I'm very glad that we had the opportunity to do this. So thank you, Dr. Bradshaw. And I look forward to learning more this semester. Thank you.